This is Frontline on Air. Major stories on the go.
When did Musi beautification become about erasing the poor? Telangana's ambitious 1.5 lakh crore riverfront project starts with evictions and demolitions in Old Hyderabad. Detailed plans remain under wraps. Ayesha Minhas.
Voice by Rakesh Sharma, Timber Media.
For the Telangana government, developing the Musi Riverfront is like setting the Thames on fire. A document titled Telangana Growth Story 2024 touts the Musi Riverfront development project as encompassing, quote, IT towers, retail, entertainment spaces, and multiple bridges across the river, drawing inspiration from the Thames River in London, unquote. However, along the 55-kilometre stretch of the river that snakes through Hyderabad, some 15,000 households, according to the government, but activists say the number is higher, who have lived for years in structures built on the riverbed and in the buffer zone, 50 metres on either side of the river, many of them with pattas or legal documents, are anxious about being evicted. The opposition claims that the project will displace at least 1 lakh people. The project has also run into controversies because of its estimated cost of 1.5 lakh crore rupees, the absence of a detailed project report, and the lack of concrete resettlement plans. On October 1st, matters came to a head when, at the instance of the government, more than 160 structures in the Shankarnagar colony of the old Malakpet area were demolished with just a day's oral notice, as the residents claimed. The inhabitants were resettled in partially occupied 2-bedroom slum resettlement buildings in Pilligudiselu, 2 kilometers away, which had been constructed during the previous Bharata Rashtra Samiti or BRS government's tenure. A couple of weeks earlier, the government had announced that 15,000 2-bedroom houses would be set aside in different locations for resettlement of all the families. Some of the residents said officials and local politicians arm-twisted them into accepting the proposal by saying that if they did not agree now, they would never get the houses. Many people whom Frontline spoke to in the buffer zone did not want to relocate. If they are forced to do so, their demand is for plots within 2 to 3 kilometers of their current residence and other benefits according to the Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013. Officials say that nearly 80% of the families living on the riverbed have expressed their willingness to relocate, but reports from the ground say otherwise. Nearly 100 residents have obtained a stay from the High Court against the razing of their houses without the due procedures being followed. One of the sticking points is that most of the vacant buildings identified for resettlement are situated at least 10 to 15 kilometers from where the evictees stay now. Besides, there is the problem of space. Mujahid, a former driver in his mid-60s, lived with 17 family members in his 4-room house. He feels it is unfair for the government to expect him and his 4 sons and daughter to move into a 2-bedroom house. Several families from Shankarnagar have rented additional houses to accommodate all their members. In Shivaji Bridge, over 120 families of rag pickers cutting across caste and religion live in huts. Many were not even home when government officials marked their houses for relocation. No official has spoken to them yet, pointing to the glaring lack of a consolidated resettlement plan. 2 days after relocation, the government offered a 25,000 rupee relocation grant. On October 18th, following protests and widespread criticism from civil society about the uprooting of people without providing them any support, the government offered a livelihood support loan of 2 lakh rupees, of which the beneficiary has to pay 60,000 rupees. The government also constituted a consultative livelihood support committee to ensure a smooth transition for families evicted from the riverbed. As for construction on patta land in the buffer zone, the government has issued conflicting statements about the resettlement plans. Experts say that such decisions cannot come as an afterthought and want the government to come up with a proper scheme for resettlement and rehabilitation. Frontline visited some riverbed settlements and found that many do want to relocate but want to be able to negotiate the terms of relocation as their livelihoods are dependent on their staying close to this part of the city. They do not want to be uprooted in a day without prior notice or without the choice to pick the location of their resettlement. The degradation of the Musi. The Musi River, which originates in the Anantagiri Hills in Vikarabad district, runs through Hyderabad and erstwhile Nalgonda district for 267 kilometers before flowing into the Krishna. In several parts of the 55 kilometers that it passes through Hyderabad, the river is virtually a cesspool. Of the 2,000 million litres of sewage that Greater Hyderabad city generates daily, only 772 million litres, that is 38%, goes through sewage treatment plants or STPs. The rest is discharged directly into the river. A couple of years ago, the National Green Tribunal, NGT, raised concerns about untreated fecal sludge from areas outside the sewage network flowing into the river. Much of the Musi's current state is often attributed to the slum-like settlements on the riverbed. Activists and urban planning experts say there are 1,600 houses on the riverbed, but according to a survey conducted by the government in September, there are 2,000 structures, which include dhobi ghats and tombs. The encroachments by the middle class and the affluent do not attract much criticism. In addition, the Mahatma Gandhi bus station, the biggest bus terminus in Telangana, environmentalists say, is built on an island in the river in violation of the River Conservation Plan. Rejuvenation of the Musi has been in the works for quite some time. Shortly after the Congress government took office in Telangana in December 2023, after defeating the BRS, which ruled the state from 2014 when it was carved out of undivided Andhra Pradesh, Chief Minister A. Revant Reddy directed the authorities to devise a comprehensive plan to construct bridges, commercial shopping complexes, amusement parks, hawker zones and pathways along the Musi in Hyderabad in a public-private partnership mode. On January 3rd, he set a time frame of 36 months to complete the first phase of construction. Reddy also travelled to London for discussions with the Port of London authorities, seeking potential collaborations. By early February, the Musi Riverfront Development Corporation Limited, MRDCL, floated tenders for consultancy services to develop a master plan for the project, which was initially estimated at 58,000 crore rupees, around $7 billion. Established on March 25, 2017 as a special purpose vehicle, the MRDCL is the nodal agency for the preparation and execution of a comprehensive plan for the abatement of pollution of Musi and riverfront development. By July 20, the project cost had escalated to 1.5 lakh crore rupees or $18 billion in public statements and various government documents. The Chief Minister announced that work on the project would begin soon. Reportedly, the survey conducted by revenue officials in September identified 10,000 structures on the riverbed and its buffer zone. Several residents claimed that the officials surveyed their homes arbitrarily and painted RBX or Riverbed Extreme, marking them for relocation, despite their pattas. The details of the survey and the methods and data used to determine the structures marked for demolition have not been made public. This has raised concerns among the public about the survey, in terms of both its legality and its data. Donti Narasimha Reddy, a public policy expert, told Frontline, quote, "The government and officials are acting completely ineptly. They have lost the ability to work with the people. There is no consistency or transparency regarding this project." End quote. Yet another controversy is the escalation of project cost within 6 months of it being announced, from 58,000 crore rupees in February to 1.5 lakh crore rupees in July, an unprecedented scale-up as far as riverfront projects are concerned. For context, the outlay for the Namami Gange program for the conservation of the Ganga is 40,000 crore rupees. The government's priorities too seem to be misplaced. Rather than handle the issues of rehabilitation and resettlement by involving bureaucrats, engineers and experts, the government threw itself open to the charge of trying to manage the media. It sent a team of journalists on a tour to study the Cheongyecheon Riverfront and the Han Riverfront development in Seoul. Significantly, the Congress's key campaign in the assembly election was the 1 lakh crore rupee loans the BRS government took for the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project. The government has attributed Telangana's poor fiscal health to the bad loans and unnecessary spending by the previous government. It is also yet to implement the 6 guarantees made in its election manifesto for youth, women and farmers because of a paucity of funds. Experts are of the opinion that removing encroachments on the riverbed alone will not rejuvenate it. For instance, the expansion of Hyderabad itself has been on lake beds, subsuming the city's natural hydrological systems. The floods of 2020 in the city were indicative of how its natural rainwater drainage system had been significantly damaged. In September this year, the Hyderabad Disaster Response and Asset Protection Agency's demolition drive of unauthorized constructions in and around water bodies made headlines. Activists insist that the government follow Government Order No. 111 fully to ensure that there are no encroachments on the catchment areas of the Osman Sagar and Himayat Sagar reservoirs on the Musi. GO 111 prohibits any form of construction that will pollute the water or air within a 10-kilometer radius of the reservoirs. During its term, the BRS had repealed GO 111 to bring in a new order to facilitate real estate growth. However, the Revant Reddy government put the repeal on hold. Experts also contend that the Musi rejuvenation plan cannot be limited to the 55-kilometer stretch of the river within the greater Hyderabad limits. Downstream, once the Musi leaves Hyderabad, it serves an ayakat of nearly 30,000 acres of agricultural land. Jeevan Kumar, State Coordination Committee member of the Human Rights Forum, said, quote, "There are about 64 villages downstream of the Musi. An efficient irrigation system exists here, but it has been hampered due to the heightened pollution from the city. It has ruined crops and yields. We aren't talking about those people at all. They are unsure of how this new riverfront project will impact them. The government needs to talk to them and address their concerns." End quote. That people want a cleaner Musi goes without saying. But most concerns in the recent past have been about the government's lack of transparency and failure to engage with those who are likely to be impacted by the project. Narasimha Reddy asks, quote, "The rejuvenation of the Musi needs 3 things: removal of encroachments, cleaning up, and prevention of pollution. What is the government's plan to prevent further pollution of the river?" End quote. No detailed plan. However, no detailed plan has yet been made available to the public. The tender process for preparing a detailed master plan got caught up in a controversy as the government cancelled an ongoing process midway without much explanation. Another tender process was initiated and approved in October, and the Meinhardt Singapore Consortium has been given 18 months to prepare a detailed report. The government faces many criticisms about how it arrived at the estimated cost of 1.5 lakh crore rupees in the absence of a detailed plan. In July, Finance Minister Mallu Bhatti Vikramarka allocated 1,500 crore rupees for the project in the budget. Activists say any information sought from MRDCL about the riverfront project gets stonewalled. Since August, an RTI activist has been attempting to get details of the surveys, boundaries, and other project details from MRDCL, only to be redirected to other departments. The alternative is to chase it through first appeals. An MRDCL official said, quote, "We are still at the ABCD stages of the project. What can I tell you?" End quote. Most experts urge the government to go beyond seeing the Musi Riverfront as a real estate opportunity and a tourism hub. The riverfront development and beautification idea is not new for Hyderabad residents. Several such projects have been proposed for the Musi in the past. In 1997, the then Chief Minister of Undivided Andhra Pradesh, Nara Chandrababu Naidu, announced the Nandanavanam project despite public opposition and concerns about its flawed design. The project was halted after structures built under the project got destroyed in the floods of 2000. The Save Musi project of 2005, undertaken during a Congress regime, also failed to change the river's fate because of ineffective implementation. In 2018, the High Court said that the works undertaken by MRDCL for beautification were shrinking the Musi. From 2018 to 2020, around 170 temporary structures, including huts and sheds, were removed from the river. A committee of the NGT also directed the government to fund 31 STPs to treat the sewage that was discharged into the river. It is, however, evident that the immediate priority of the current government is to raise settlements and beautify a part of the stretch. In an article titled Hyderabad's Musi River, Why Do Technocratic Solutions Fail in Safeguarding Urban Water Bodies?, published in Economic and Political Weekly in 2020, Vikas Sehra criticized such an approach. He said, quote, "Distorted futuristic visions for building urban spectacles such as riverfronts have only commodified urban commons into prized real estate spots. Resistance to such projects is, therefore, delegitimized, co-opted, or managed by ambivalent approaches, adversely affecting the needs of the population concerned." End quote. The All India Majlis-e-Ittihad al-Muslimin has extended its support to the residents and demanded that the government's survey report be made public so that people can voice their concerns. Elected representatives have also challenged the legality of the survey and criticized the lack of prior notice or information about it. Campaign for Housing and Tenurial Rights, a non-profit organization, has demanded that the government remedy the many flaws in the identification and marking of houses. It has urged the government to hold consultation meetings with the people affected by the project. Frontline spoke to residents of both Kishanbagh and Hashamnagar localities who have approached the court over flaws in the survey. A resident told Frontline, quote, "According to the 2003 survey, my house wasn't on the riverbed. Now officials have marked a portion of my house as riverbed encroachment and told me to forget the 2003 survey." End quote. He was referring to a survey instituted by the Naidu government in 2003 of all the structures on the riverbed. The residents say that they have paid electricity bills and fees for various other services from the government for decades now. Adding to the confusion are the contradictory statements made by the various centres of power. For instance, Minister Ponguleti Srinivas Reddy, who was on the study tour to Seoul with media persons, said the government was considering allocating house sites along the outer ring road to the people living on the riverbed or buffer zone. However, the Chief Minister has repeatedly said that he plans to build a new colony, if need be, to resettle every person impacted by the project. Many families living on the riverbed are willing to relocate, although reluctantly, provided there is a resolution to all their concerns. Putli Begum, 84, has lived in her home in Shankarnagar for nearly 50 years, a 115 square yard house built on Patta land. During this time, she and her family have repaired and rebuilt the house about 6 times. Officials have now told the family to pack their bags as they can be relocated at any time. Is this a joke? Hassan asks. The joke, of course, is always on the poor. The course of the Musi project. December 12, 2023. Chief Minister A. Revant Reddy asks the authorities to devise a comprehensive plan to construct bridges, commercial shopping complexes, amusement parks, hawker zones, and pathways along the Musi in PPP mode. January 3, 2024. CM directs officials to develop the Musi Riverfront on a 55-kilometer stretch in Hyderabad in the next 36 months. This is the first phase. January 19th. Reddy visits London and discusses plans for Musi rejuvenation with the Port of London authorities. February 5th. Musi Riverfront Development Corporation Limited, MRDCL, floats tenders for consultancy services to prepare the aggregate master plan for the project. The project's cost is estimated at 58,000 crore rupees in the expression of interest document. July 20th. No group is selected for consultancy, but certain documents and speeches project the estimated cost at 1.5 lakh crore rupees. CM announces that the work on the project will start soon. August 8th. MRDCL cancels the tender process initiated in February, citing technical reasons. New tenders floated. October 1st. The first round of demolitions of encroachments on the riverbed begins amid criticism for rushing the process before working on a detailed project report or master plan. October 4th. Minehart Singapore Consortium hired to develop the detailed project report within 18 months at a consultancy fee of Rs 141 crores. The consortium will continue its work for 5 more years after the detailed project report is ready to suggest options for raising the required funds. Opposition parties flag issues with the consortium and the tendering process. October 5th. Following protests and pressure from the public and civil society groups, the government forms a consultative livelihood support committee to ensure a smooth transition in livelihoods for the families residing in the houses on the riverbed. October 7th. Protests continue as the public is uncertain about the government's plans. CM Reddy says nearly 10,000 families will be affected by the project and that the government will build a colony with all amenities including schools, ITIs and engineering college for the affected families, spending 10,000 crore rupees if need be.
This is Frontline on Air. Major stories on the go.